The Pandora Papers: How the World of Offshore Finance is Still Flourishing. In October 2021, the world was once again jolted by a massive leak of financial data, exposing the shadowy world of offshore finance used by the global elite to hide wealth, avoid taxes, and manipulate their financial holdings. Dubbed the Pandora Papers, this leak was the largest of its kind, with over 12 million documents revealing the secret financial dealings of politicians, billionaires, celebrities, and criminal enterprises across more than 90 countries. While offshore finance had been exposed in previous leaks like the Panama Papers and the Paradise Papers, the Pandora Papers further demonstrated that, despite global efforts to regulate and curtail tax evasion, the world of offshore finance is not only alive but thriving. This detailed exploration unpacks the Pandora Papers, the players involved, and why offshore finance continues to flourish despite mounting scrutiny. What are the Pandora Papers? The Pandora Papers is a massive leak of financial records obtained by the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists, who collaborated with over 600 journalists from around the world. The leak contained more than 2.94 terabytes of data from 14 offshore service providers that specialize in creating and maintaining shell companies, trusts, and secretive financial structures for their clients. These documents exposed how the global elite, including heads of state, celebrities, and powerful business leaders, use offshore finance systems to conceal their wealth and, in many cases, avoid paying taxes. The revelations provided insight into how these offshore networks operate and how loopholes in the global financial system allow the rich to keep their fortunes hidden. How offshore finance works. Offshore finance refers to the practice of moving money and assets to jurisdictions outside the country where an individual or company is based. These jurisdictions, known as tax havens or secrecy jurisdictions, offer favorable tax regimes, weak regulatory oversight, and anonymity, making it easy for the wealthy to shelter their assets from tax authorities, creditors, and the public. The two main tools used in offshore finance are shell companies and trusts. Shell companies are entities that exist only on paper and have no physical presence, employees, or operations. They are typically used to hold assets or conduct transactions without revealing the real owners, known as the beneficial owners. Trusts are legal arrangements where a trustee manages assets on behalf of beneficiaries. Trusts can be used to distance the actual owner from their wealth, making it difficult to trace the true ownership of assets. These structures are often created by offshore service providers, which specialize in setting up shell companies and trusts in tax havens like the British Virgin Islands, Panama, and the Cayman Islands. Wealthy individuals and corporations use these entities to hold property, yachts, private jets, artwork, and other assets while keeping their identity secret. Key figures exposed by the Pandora Papers. The Pandora Papers shed light on how some of the world's most powerful figures use offshore structures to shield their wealth. Among those named in the leaks were over 330 politicians from 90 countries, including current and former heads of state, business tycoons, and celebrities. Some of the most notable revelations include King Abdullah II of Jordan. The papers revealed that the Jordanian monarch had secretly purchased more than $100 million worth of luxury homes in the United States and the United Kingdom through offshore companies. While no laws were broken, the news sparked outrage given the economic struggles facing his country. Former UK Prime Minister Tony Blair and his wife were shown to have avoided paying £312,000 in taxes when they purchased a multi-million-pound property in London by buying the offshore company that owned it. Czech Prime Minister Andrej Babiš, a billionaire, was found to have used offshore companies to buy a $22 million chateau in France. This revelation emerged just before the Czech elections, complicating his political campaign. Russian President Vladimir Putin. While Putin's name did not appear directly in the Pandora Papers, several of his close associates, including a childhood friend and his alleged mistress, were tied to vast amounts of offshore wealth, further raising questions about Putin's undisclosed assets. Colombian singer Shakira and Formula One champion Lewis Hamilton, Both celebrities were found to have used offshore structures to manage their finances, although their representatives stated that their activities were fully legal. Why offshore finance persists. Despite the exposure from leaks like the Pandora Papers, the offshore finance industry continues to thrive. This persistence can be attributed to several key factors: loopholes and lack of enforcement. While many countries have taken steps to increase transparency and crack down on tax evasion, legal loopholes still exist that allow offshore structures to flourish. In many cases, these loopholes are intentionally maintained by governments that benefit from the influx of foreign capital into their financial systems. For example, certain tax havens in the Caribbean, the Middle East, and even the U.S. state of Delaware have become havens for global elites. Additionally, enforcement is often weak, particularly in jurisdictions where secrecy is a key selling point. Offshore service providers are experts at navigating the complex web of international tax laws, allowing their clients to avoid detection. Even when laws are passed to increase transparency, such as the Common Reporting Standard, compliance can be inconsistent, and enforcement is often left to under-resourced tax authorities. Globalization and the digital economy. The rise of globalization and the digital economy has made it easier than ever to move money and assets across borders. With the click of a button, individuals and corporations can transfer funds to offshore accounts or purchase assets through shell companies. The digital nature of modern finance makes it difficult for regulators to keep up with the sheer volume of transactions flowing through the global financial system. Weak political will. While there is widespread public outrage over the use of offshore structures by the wealthy elite, political will to enact meaningful reforms is often lacking. This is partly because many politicians and government officials themselves benefit from offshore finance. The Pandora Papers exposed numerous high-level politicians who use offshore structures to conceal their wealth, creating a conflict of interest when it comes to implementing reforms. Furthermore, powerful lobbying groups representing multinational corporations and the financial industry often push back against efforts to regulate offshore finance, arguing that such regulations would stifle economic growth and innovation. Sophisticated financial engineering. The financial strategies employed by those using offshore structures are becoming increasingly sophisticated. Offshore service providers and law firms specialize in creating complex, multi-jurisdictional networks of shell companies, trusts, and other legal structures that make it difficult to trace ownership and detect illegal activity. These strategies are designed to operate within the bounds of the law, making it challenging for regulators to crack down on them. Without comprehensive international cooperation, the global impact of offshore finance. The proliferation of offshore finance has significant global implications. For one, it exacerbates income inequality by allowing the world's wealthiest individuals and corporations to avoid paying their fair share of taxes. According to estimates, as much as $32 trillion in wealth is hidden in offshore accounts, depriving governments of critical revenue that could be used to fund public services like healthcare, education, and infrastructure. Offshore finance also fuels corruption and money laundering, as criminals and corrupt officials use secretive financial structures to hide illicit proceeds. The Pandora Papers exposed how some political leaders use offshore entities to stash wealth obtained through questionable means, while drug cartels, human traffickers, and terrorist organizations also exploit these networks to launder money. The path forward: can offshore finance be reined in? In the wake of the Pandora Papers, there have been renewed calls for global action to regulate offshore finance. Some key proposals include stronger transparency measures. Governments can adopt more stringent regulations requiring beneficial ownership to be publicly disclosed. This would make it more difficult for individuals and companies to hide behind anonymous shell companies and trusts. International cooperation. Offshore finance is a global problem that requires a coordinated response. Countries must work together to close tax loopholes, share financial information, and impose penalties on jurisdictions that refuse to cooperate. Tax reform. Tax systems need to be restructured to ensure that wealthy individuals and corporations are paying their fair share. This includes addressing the use of offshore tax havens by multinational corporations that shift profits to low-tax jurisdictions to avoid taxes in the countries where they operate. Conclusion: the Pandora Papers provide a sobering reminder that offshore finance remains a thriving industry, despite years of efforts to bring it under control. While the revelations have sparked outrage and led to calls for reform, the global elite continue to exploit legal loopholes and lax enforcement to shield their wealth from scrutiny. If meaningful change is to occur, it will require a coordinated international effort, stronger political will, and comprehensive reforms aimed at increasing transparency and closing the loopholes that allow offshore finance to flourish. The question remains: will the Pandora Papers finally lead to the dismantling of the offshore finance system, or will the wealthy elite continue to operate in the shadows? Only time will tell. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment below.